Posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall by mail to the Ridgewood News, the record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. By the way, this is a Ridgewood Village Council regular public meeting. Today, September 12, 2018. The time is 8 p.m. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Knudsen. Here. Councilman Seaton.
Here.
Councilman Voigt.
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh.
Here.
And Mayor Hache.
Here. Please stand for flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join us for a moment of silence in honor of the brave men and women serving in our nation's armed forces and as first responders. Thank you. All right. I move the bills, claims, and vouchers and statements of funds on hand as of August 31st, 2018 be accepted as submitted.
Second.
Knudsen. Yes. Seaton.
Yes.
Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. I move that the Village Council minutes of July 18, August 1st, and August 8, 2018, having been reviewed by the Village Council and now available in the Village Clerk's office, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Knudsen. Yes. Seaton.
Yes.
Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. We move on to proclamations. We have quite a few. We'll start with Deputy Mayor Knudsen on Fire Prevention Week.
Thank you. Whereas the Village of Ridgewood is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting our town, and whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are in locations where people are at the greatest risk from fire, and whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires and home fire injuries, while heating equipment and smoking are the leading causes of home fire deaths. And whereas the Village of Ridgewood's first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education, and whereas the Village of Ridgewood residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. And whereas the residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And whereas the 2018 Fire Prevention Week theme, Look, Listen, Learn, Be Aware, Fire Can Happen Anywhere, is all about keeping the residents of the Village of Ridgewood, their families, and their community safer from fire through educational materials and tip sheets on the leading causes of home fires, life-saving technologies, and the importance of home escape planning. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim the week of October 7th through October 13th, 2018 as Fire Prevention Week throughout the village, and urges all residents to protect their homes and families by heeding the important safety messages of Fire Prevention Week 2018.
Thank you. Now, Gold Star Mother's Day, Councilwoman Walsh.
Whereas the United States of America, through its armed forces, has had many heroes who have defended the lives and liberties of all their fellow Americans, and whereas many of these heroes have lost their lives in order to defend the virtues of our hard-won liberty and security, and whereas the parents, spouses, and children of these fallen heroes, known as America's Gold Star mothers and families, are aware of the exceptional spirit of service which their military family members possessed, which led them to protect and preserve the freedoms which we, as Americans, enjoy every single day. And whereas these Gold Star families have the courage and strength to comfort other families, support veterans, and give back to their communities. And whereas the Congress of the United States, by Senate Joint Resolution 115 of July 23, 1936, has designated the last Sunday in September as Gold Star Mother's Day. And whereas Marine parents began an initiative several years ago to encourage Americans to light a luminary on Gold Star Mother's Day. And whereas on the evening of Sunday, September 30th, 2018, the Village of Ridgewood will observe Gold Star Mother's Day in Memorial Park at Van Ness Square by placing luminaries on the outskirts of the park to honor and acknowledge the mothers and families of our fallen heroes. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood, in recognition of this event, does hereby proclaim Sunday, September 30th, 2018 as Gold Star Mother's Day in the Village of Ridgewood, and does hereby encourage all Ridgewood residents to light a luminary at their homes in honor and recognition of the families of the fallen soldiers throughout the United States of America.
Thank you. National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Councilman Seaton.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the Village of Ridgewood values the health of all its citizens, and whereas the Village of Ridgewood supports awareness of diseases such as breast cancer, which affect the lives of its citizens, and whereas October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and whereas the National Breast Cancer Awareness Month educates women about the importance of early detection for breast cancer, and whereas since the inception of National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, mammography use has doubled and breast cancer death rates have declined. And whereas the Village of Ridgewood would like to promote the use of a mammography as the best available method of detecting breast changes that may be cancer, and whereas breast cancer deaths could decline further if all women age 40 and older receive mammograms at regular intervals. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood urges all women and their families in the Village of Ridgewood to get the facts about mammography and proclaims October 2018 as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month as we rededicate ourselves to the pursuit of new and better ways to prevent, detect, and treat this devastating disease in the Village of Ridgewood.
Thank you. Walktoberfest. Councilman Boyd.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood, in partnership with Walktoberfest and Safe Routes initiatives, recognizes the importance of walking and would like to encourage more residents to recognize walking opportunities within the village. And whereas a lack of physical activity plays a leading role in rising rates of obesity, diabetes, and other health problems among children and adults, and choosing to walk whenever possible offers an opportunity to build activity into daily routine while providing tangible benefits to physical and mental health. And whereas choosing to drive a vehicle contributes significantly to traffic and parking congestion and air pollution each and every day, and whereas the Village of Ridgewood was designed to encourage walking neighborhoods and a walkable central business district by choosing to build neighborhood schools, developing an accessible business zone, and continuing efforts to create pedestrian-friendly environments. And whereas the entire month of October will be dedicated to encouraging and providing walking opportunities within the village by implementing a series of walkable tours throughout the village, including schools, houses of worship, governmental buildings, central business district, and more. And whereas the Walktoberfest Village Tours will highlight unique aspects of Ridgewood life by including important information about each tour stop to include, among other things, historic, cultural, artistic, and neighborhood facts. And whereas the Village Council encourages residents and visitors to participate in this exciting event and to sign up for walking tours to learn more about village life while enjoying the benefits of choosing to walk as part of a healthy lifestyle. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood, in recognition of this event, does hereby proclaim October 2018 as Walktoberfest in the Village of Ridgewood, and does hereby encourage all Ridgewood residents to find a way to participate in Walktoberfest and to make walking a part of their daily routine during the month of October and throughout the year.
Thank you. And before I read the next proclamation, I just want to thank Alderman Joel Frieders from Yorkville, Illinois, who reached out to me. Alderman Frieders lost a friend in 2017 to suicide and has started a proclamation project to raise the awareness of preventing suicides, and he's already in 2018 has gotten about 190 cities on board with this proclamation project. So I'm very happy tonight to read the following proclamation. Whereas September is known around the United States as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and is intended to help promote awareness surrounding each of the suicide prevention resources available to us in our community. The simple goal is to learn how to help those around us and how to talk about suicide without increasing the risk of harm. And whereas suicidal thoughts can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, race, orientation, income level, religion, or background, And whereas according to the CDC, each year more than 41,000 people die by suicide, and suicide is the 10th leading cause of death among adults and the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 24 in the United States. And whereas the village of Ridgewood, New Jersey is no different than any other community in the country, but chooses to publicly state and place our full support behind local educators, mental health professionals, athletic coaches, scout leaders, police officers, and parents as partners in supporting our community in simply being available to one another. And whereas local organizations like Suicide Prevention Services and national organizations like the National Alliance on Mental Illness are on the front lines of a battle that many still refuse to discuss in public, as suicide and mental illness remain taboo topics which are not spoken about. And whereas every resident of the village of Ridgewood should understand that throughout life struggles, we all need the occasional reminder that we are all silently fighting our own battles. And whereas the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood encourages all residents to take the time to inquire as to the well-being of their family, friends, and neighbors over the next few days, and to genuinely convey their appreciation for their existence by any gesture they deem appropriate. A simple phone call, message, handshake, or hug can go a long way towards helping someone realize that suicide is not the answer. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim September 2018 National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in the Village of Ridgewood, and ask our residents to open minds, save lives, and restore hope through prevention and intervention through the use of education, advocacy, and collaboration.
Okay, our next item is the resolution of appointment and swearing in of the municipal humane law enforcement officers. The following resolution, numbered 18-269, will be adopted by a consent agenda with one vote by the Village Council. It will be read by title only. Resolution number 18-269, appointment of municipal humane law enforcement officers. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. You guys now will join me to do the swearing in. Good. Congratulations. You're very brave, I got to tell you. This is not easy stuff, so appreciate you.
Don't forget the Bible.
You have the Bible there? Carol Tyler? All right. Put your hand on the Bible, please. And repeat after me. Better shot? Oh, beautiful. I, Carol Tyler, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all of the duties of the Office of Municipal Humane Law Enforcement Officer. According to the best of my ability. So help me God. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Perfect. Should get the shot. I, Kimberly Nagel, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all of the duties of the office of Municipal Humane Law Enforcement Officer according to the best of my ability. So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you.
All right, Kristen Gunderson. Good. I, Kristen Gunderson, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all of the duties of the office of Municipal Humane Law Enforcement Officer according to the best of my ability. So help me God. Perfect. You want to take some pictures together or separate or? Okay, we'll move to public comments, not to exceed 3 minutes per person. Good evening.
Good evening. Tony Damiano, 274 South Broad Street. Two topics tonight. The new parking plan. Just a comment. I was really surprised that the meters are being removed, and I'm getting a lot of feedback on that. A lot of people come into town just to grab a cup of coffee, a bagel, what have you, visit the pharmacy, and it's so much easier to just throw a quarter in for 20 minutes than to have to deal with the kiosk, especially in inclement weather, rain, snow, etc. So I'm in favor of the kiosks. I think they are working, but I think the customers should have the option of still paying the meters. Again, a quarter for 20 minutes. It's kind of an in and out thing. I'm really here tonight representing HPC, and two of my colleagues are here, Lynn Brady and Tess Giuliani. We have a situation in town going on where older homes are being torn down, and I am particularly referring to the home, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, on 249 Prospect. The home was built in the 1790s. It's the Vanderbeck house. The homeowner bought it sight unseen. He gutted it out, and now he wants to tear it down and rebuild. It's not suitable for his family. Homes like this have special meaning to Ridgewood. They have character. They are part of our heritage. And we all believe that something should be done to prevent this. He made a poor investment. Like I said, he bought it sight unseen. We all visited the home. He gutted it out, and now he's saying it's not structurally sound, when in fact it is. The other issue is it's on a very irregular piece of property. It's kind of pie-shaped. If he does demolish it, he has to go through several variances to rebuild. To create awareness, I called Ridgewood News. They did run an article on it. I've since had two people come in from the neighborhood thanking me for having the article run. I mean, I don't know where we draw the line on this, but this is part of Ridgewood's strong heritage, and it would really be a shame to see this home torn down, and he's working kind of aggressively on doing this. So if anything could be done to prevent it, it's kind of in line with the Shedler home, that we want to preserve that, and I think the Prospect Street home as well needs to be preserved. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Lynn Brady at 350 Vesta Court. I'm also on historic preservation and an architect. I had been the architect for Bergen County and now a private architect. But I think you really need to realize if the house is torn down and the owner is intending to build on that piece of property, it says a triangular property, he needs variances on the two front yards and the rear yard. And the variances are huge. It's not just a 3-foot variance, it's probably 10 to 20 feet on each of the 3 sides. So I know I've been before various commissions trying to get like one variance, and that's hard enough, but he requires a huge variance. And we're just afraid it's going to be torn down and nothing can replace it. And it has a beautiful lot. I think it's really prominent. You don't see it that much, but it's a prominent location in Ridgewood. So, as I said, I just wanted to add those 2 facts, but thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Doug Goodell, 234 Mulberry Place. I want to start just with a parking point. I experienced for the first time this morning trying our new kiosks. They sort of worked well. I put in a quarter and it registered. I put in a second quarter and it registered. It says it takes coins, so then I put in a dime. It didn't register. I put in another dime. It didn't register. If it's only supposed to take quarters, it ought to say so. Okay, that's not the main reason why I came tonight, though. Parking is, and the general thrust of what I want to comment on is increasing parking fees and things like this in relation to what we need to justify parking garages and covering their expenses. I don't know all the details of how all the finances balance, but the central business district, our central downtown area, is so important to the overall vibrance of the town, to which everyone in town benefits. And I think if we have extra expenses that we need to cover some of these things, you should be considering it coming out of general revenues, even if it means tax increases, because what goes on in the central business district, just like what goes on in our schools, affects the value of all our property all over town. And if we need to do things to maintain this stability, it should be done and considered out of general revenues, not just taking it out of the pockets of the people who happen to come into town. Now, the revenues, the fees that we have right now, I think are not unreasonable. But I have heard that there's going to be significant increases over the next few years. I think this is a real question that we should consider. It's too important to the town, and everybody should have some responsibility for covering what is needed. One other thing I was trying to think of to say, well, I guess I'll quit there, but it's important to have broader consideration than just, the other thing I was going to say was, the new parking structure, I don't have any problem with that. My problem is, we need 2 of them. And in the end, you're going to have to consider more parking structures. Unless all the apartments contribute to such vibrancy of the town, that they're not needed, but I don't know about that. We considered a lot of these issues back in 1983 when we developed the master plan.
Time's up, sorry.
At that time, but we didn't anticipate all the things that were going on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Anybody else? Good evening.
Honorable Mayor, Council members, my name is Ted Lestrange. I'm not a resident of Ridgewood. My address is 43 Prospect Hill, Cuddy Backville, that's upstate New York. I don't have local issues to discuss. Is that okay? In fact, I've entitled this Genocide by Scalpel, because that's a title given by one of the investigators into forced organ harvesting in China. Their updated research concludes that China's hospitals transplant between 60,000 and 100,000 vital human body organs each year. But China has no real organ donation program. Here in the US, with the most sophisticated organ transplant system in the world, a patient can wait 2 to 3 years for a matching organ just to become available. In China, however, the waiting time is measured in weeks. An organ transplant tourist to China, including one for Ridgewood, can arrange a specific date for their operation, which unfortunately means that someone will be killed on their behalf on that date. It's a cultural taboo to donate one's organs after death in China. So what's the source of all these organs? Translation of these facts equates to tens of thousands of prisoners of conscience each year being killed for their organs. Most of these prisoners of conscience are Falun Gong practitioners, but also Tibetans, Uyghurs, and house Christians. They're routinely blood tested and their organs examined while held in China's forced labor camps, detention centers, and black jails. I've got a quote. On June 13th, 2016, the U.S. House of Representatives unanimously passed Resolution 343, which in its summary section, quote, condemns the practice of state-sanctioned forced organ harvesting in China, close quote. The European Parliament has also passed similar resolutions. This has been happening for over 18 years. Still a deathly silence on this issue. And that is why I come before you, the elected and respected representatives of the community, to echo the heavy burden of this genocide as acknowledged by the House. China's total control of its own media and way beyond that. So it comes down to this type of word of mouth to divulge what's happening. Many dedicated researchers have gathered an enormous amount of data from current and archived hospital websites, medical journals, local media reports, telephone surveys, and other evidence for the 865 hospitals in China that have performed these organ transplants. Some books are now being written and documentaries have been produced with more comprehensive information. So I brought along a little package of materials for you all. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank
Can
you.
I drop that up?
Sure, yeah. Come on up. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. You have more? Is there something for Matt?
Oh, Donna's not here.
Oh, it went to Matt.
Matt?
Could I make one more comment?
You know what? Normally we wouldn't, but it's a light evening tonight. It was 3 minutes. I know
That's
you have a lot
amazing,
more to say.
isn't it?
Go ahead.
You've heard this before, I know. The gentleman that just spoke, I'm sure he was very clear. Where I was in the audience, he was unintelligible. The sound system, we have to do something about it.
We're working on it. We're going to work on it.
Okay.
We feel your pain. Anybody else? All right, we'll close public comments. Although there was no question posed, I do want to just address some of the points that were made about parking and financing the parking garage. There was always that debate of how do you fund this thing, right? And I definitely agree. The better the CBD does, the better that the community does. Rising tides lifts all ships. When making a decision as to how we finance a garage, it's also thinking about where are our tax rates and where are our parking rates. Our tax rates are some of the highest in the state, some of the highest in the country, for that matter. While our parking rates, when compared to other municipalities that actually charge for parking, they're some of the lowest. So having the choice to raise one of the two, the rates was the more clear choice. The other issue also went as to, where do you place the burden on raising this revenue? If you do it only through taxation, the burden falls solely on the shoulders of the taxpayer. If you do it on parking rates, it's spread out for anyone who uses the downtown, whether they live in Ridgewood or not, but it spreads out the burden a little bit more. So that was the reason why that decision was made. In terms of the increases, there's a schedule of increases that was suggested to us by Walker, who was our parking consultants. What we discussed at the last meeting is that there are potentially some significant sources of revenues that we will see, in part through the kiosks, that will hopefully eliminate the need to have these severe increases in the future. So we want to, it's a moving sort of, process here, and we're definitely going to do, if given the choice of having a surplus, having some money in hand, to kind of use that surplus to not have to increase the rates, because we don't want to also, price ourselves out of business. So just wanted to add those comments. Thank you.
And can I just add?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm just going to thank Tony Damiano, Tess Giuliani, and Lynn Brady for coming to talk about the Vanderbeck Walton House. I have some comments I'll be making during my report, and I'll be talking to Matt Rogers further. He and I have kind of gone down this road about 10,000 times. The difference between publicly owned property and privately owned property, and the protections based on the national and state registries, historic registries. So I'm going to talk to him again about it. I don't know that we have the ability to do anything, but anything we can do, any intervention, we will do. So I just want to assure you that. Okay, thank you, Tony.
All right, we'll close public comments, and now we have a presentation by Ridgewood Water.
So I'll have Rich Calby, the director of Ridgewood Water, and Dan Timoney, the business manager, come up at this time.
Just for the record, for those who missed, there was a webinar this afternoon hosted by us. Oh, so if you didn't have a chance to dial in, here's your second chance to hear it.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and good evening. As the Mayor stated, this afternoon, together we led a webinar on emerging contaminants for all key stakeholders in our service area, mayors, council, colleagues like yourself, superintendents of schools, other colleagues in the industry, representatives from the Department of Environmental Protection, members of the Association of Environmental Authorities, and several other large stakeholder groups in the state. We had about 21 attendees on the call. We had expected more. We had invited a lot more. But we're here tonight to repeat the very webinar that we presented this afternoon for you. I do ask, if you can, please hold questions to the end, because we did have some issues with the sound during the webinar today. So we'd like to utilize tonight's version to submit it out to the group that had attended, so they get the full effect of the information. So with that, I'll begin. Okay. So this is the title of our presentation, and it's a very important one. So as you know, every year we put out a water quality report or consumer confidence report called our CCR. It has to go out by July 1st of every year. It's a very important document, and it's required to be in compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act. To maintain awareness on water quality issues, Ridgewood Water will be supplementing this year's report with an additional document on emerging contaminants, particularly per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or we call them PFAS. The goal of tonight's presentation is to educate you and the public on PFAS, to tell you what we know about this contaminant and several compounds that consist in its class, what we're doing about it, what some of our results are against some of the current criteria the state is considering and that the EPA has established, and to certainly answer any questions that you have about all of that.
So, Rich, just to sort of context, the Ridgewood Water's main goal is really to provide clean and safe drinking water for our customers. That we really view as our main responsibility. We take that very seriously. We're in the process now of a $42 million capital improvement project for the entire system. We are also, have to deal with the responsibility to the regulators, so NJDEP and U.S. EPA. And the challenge here is that these regulations and the guidelines are constantly evolving and changing. So there's a lot of hard work that goes along with that to kind of track and follow, and as these requirements change, how do we adapt to those changes? So what we wanted to do is, as we like to do with Ridgewood Water, is to really get ahead of this, to kind of be proactive and, instead of reactive, and just have as much information as it comes into us that we can disseminate to the public, just so that everyone is well informed. So we hope that you find this very informative.
Thank you, and none of this is required. This is all a proactive stance on behalf of the utility and the village to inform our customers. We've been about that, as the mayor stated from the very beginning. So to give you some background on what we're talking about, since 2001, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has had the Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Program, or UCMR. The EPA uses UCMR to collect data for contaminants that are suspected to be present in drinking water and do not have health-based standards set under the Safe Drinking Water. So in other words, they're not regulated, but the research is done to find out what effects they may have. So in 2014 and 15, as part of the third round of that unregulated contaminant monitoring, Ridgewood Water collected and provided to the U.S. EPA and the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection data from all of our active treatment plants to determine the occurrence of unregulated contaminants referred to as contaminants of emerging concern. Included in that group of contaminants that were monitored were 6 unregulated contaminants in the group of compounds called PFAS. Ridgewood Water collected those samples in those 2 years as part of an ongoing study to determine the general occurrence of the unregulated contaminants. Currently, there are no drinking water regulations for these compounds. Unregulated contaminant monitoring helps the U.S. EPA and New Jersey DEP to determine where certain contaminants occur and whether they should consider regulating those contaminants in the future. The table that you see below on this slide is exact replica of what was in this year's consumer conference report that went to every mailbox, every consumer in our system by July 1st of this year. This represents all the unregulated contaminants that were required to be tested by Ridgewood Water in that period of time, 2014 and 15. The only exception is the bottom 2 rows representing the contaminants in the family of PFAS, PFOA and PFOS. The results here represent more current data that was taken as part of our first round of sampling by Ridgewood Water in 2017 and 18. So what are we talking about? What is PFAS? There are hundreds of PFAS compounds in the environment. The ones we want to talk and key in on specifically today are PFOA, PFOS, and PFNA. These are man-made chemicals that have been used for firefighting, to make carpets, clothing, fabrics of furniture, packaging for food, and other materials that are resistant to water, grease, or stains. PFASs are surfactants. They help resist the water on the surface of these materials. They are widespread and extremely persistent in the environment. They've been found as far as the North Pole. They are certainly in a lot of stuff. The next slide will give you a perspective of just how many areas in the United States have been identified to have these contaminants. This map was put together by the Environmental Working Group in 2017. The dots represent water systems throughout the United States that have detections of these contaminants from the unregulated contaminant rule. The next slide will zoom in on New Jersey itself. You could see several dots spanning the state of New Jersey. If you key in our area to the north, the northernmost dot happens to be Mahwah. The southernmost dot happens to be Fair Lawn. We sit right in the middle. There we don't have a dot at the moment. The 2 red dots are known contaminated sites. One is Montclair and the other one is South Orange. All this information is available online on the EWR website. So why are we finding this out now? Unregulated contaminants present in the water supply for years are now being detected and evaluated because of enhanced data collection and testing capabilities. In 2014 and 15, the minimum detection limits for those rounds of testings were much higher than they are today. PFOS was tested at 20 parts per trillion, and PFOS was tested at a minimum of 40 parts per trillion, and PFOA and PFNA were tested at a minimum of 20 parts per trillion. Due to technology improvements today, we can now detect as low as 2 parts per trillion for each of these contaminants. The current U.S. EPA health advisory level set for PFOA and PFOS is 70 parts per trillion, either individually or as a combination. So if we have a well that happens to have either of those contaminants in them and it exceeds that 70 parts per trillion, either individually or combined, it exceeds that health advisory limit. The health advisory level offers a margin of protection for all Americans throughout their life from adverse health effects resulting from exposure to PFOA and PFOS in drinking water. Based on the effects to the most sensitive populations with a lifetime of exposure to PFOA and PFOS from drinking water. That's the main basis of why the health advisory was created. When this was released 2 years ago, this set off a spiral of hotspots throughout the United States. Several areas with levels in the hundreds and thousands for these compounds, primarily located adjacent to Air Force, military bases, or airports where firefighting foams were utilized to put out and extinguish fires. There were also industry sites where these chemicals were utilized for manufacturing. A lot of the big hotbeds exist in the state of New York, New Hampshire, Michigan, Pennsylvania, parts of New Jersey, and other states. So what is the New Jersey DEP doing about these contaminants? The DEP currently has limited drinking water regulations or enforceable maximum contaminant levels, or MCLs, for PFAS compounds. The DEP has recently issued guidance and criteria for 2 of the compounds and set a standard for the third. PFOA, they have set a guidance level of 14 parts per trillion. This was set in October of 2017. It was a reduction from the 2007 guidance, which was a value of 40 parts per trillion. For PFOS, they set a criteria of 13 parts per trillion. That was recently released this month. PFNA is also set at 13 parts per trillion, but was set this month at a maximum contaminant level. So this compound itself is one that we have to monitor and regulate. But fortunately, we do not have high detections of this in our system. New Jersey is taking the lead on these contaminants on the basis of recommendations from the Drinking Water Quality Institute, which is the board mechanism through the Department of Environmental Protection that makes recommendations to the Commission on MCLs. So these are some of the lowest MCLs you'll see in the United States right now, or our guidance levels. Just to put them in perspective, EPA versus DEP, the scientific understanding of the toxicity and health effects of PFAS are certainly evolving, and that's why there are differing levels identified by both of the agencies. You could work your way from right to left on the chart. You could see the EPA health advisory is 70 parts per trillion. That was announced in May of 2006. There isn't even a health advisory for PFNA in the EPA column. But as you work your way to the left, the DEP guidance levels you could see are much lower, at 14 parts per trillion for PFOA, 13 parts per trillion for PFOS, and 13 parts per trillion for PFNA. So what is Ridgewood Water's testing results? Well, in November 2017, we were notified by the DEP about the PFOA guidance that was being released. Late that fall and early 2018, Ridgewood began voluntary, regular monitoring at all active points of entry based on the DEP recommendation. I just want to note the DEP recommendation was to only do follow-up monitoring on any point of entry that was identified to have a level of over 10 parts per trillion based on the unregulated contaminant information. We chose to monitor every single point of entry in our system as a precaution for our system safety and health. The table below will show you round 1 results were all in on January 16th of this year. Round 2 came in on July 18th. Round 3 has been taken and should be coming in as early as next week, although Hurricane Florence may be affecting that because our lab is in Carolina. Round 4 will be taken in December. During the round 2 sampling, Ridgewood Water also voluntarily sampled the purchased water from our Suez and Hawthorne interconnections. All samples were analyzed for a suite of 14 PFS compounds, as opposed to the 6 that were measured as part of the unregulated contaminant rule. The reporting limit that we used to test was down to 2 parts per trillion. In September 2018, DEP notified us about the PFOS guidance that I mentioned on the earlier slide. So to give you a perspective of the actual results, repeating the columns of the DEP guidance and the EPA health advisory levels, once again, you could see the Ridgewood water results that are to the right for the 2 rounds of information that we have tested. PFOA is in the range of 8.13 to 30.6 with a system average of 21.78. PFOS is in the range of non-detect to 13.9 with a system average of 6.82. PFNA is in the range of 0.45 to 3.91 with a system average of 1.38. So what is the action plan giving these results? Based on what the results were, you could see PFOA is widespread in the system. There's very little concern with PFOS and certainly none with PFNA, which has the current MCL. So what is Ridgewood Water doing about this? What actions are being taken? We shut down the CAR treatment plant. We eliminated the greatest potential for PFAS compounds to be introduced into our system. This is the result of data that we had from the UCMR information back in 2013, 14, and 15, and we did it back in 16. January 2017 was actually the date it was shut down. We're going to inform all stakeholders to report all levels and actions being taken with the state and our customers. We'll begin to monitor on a set quarterly basis and include in our testing Gen X compounds. These are the replacement compounds for PFOA and PFOS. They are now being detected in several water systems, so we're going to test for them as well. We're going to assess additional plants to be targeted for future treatment investment, like the CAR project. We're going to evaluate alternative treatment methods in an effort to reduce installation and maintenance costs related to future treatment. We're going to communicate with wholesale providers about their PFAS levels and collaborate on solutions for treatment. We're going to determine the sources of the contamination and seek funding from responsible parties. And we will seek legislative partners to push for coherent strategies for dealing with responsible parties. The treatment plant, starting with CAR, we recently took bids for this project last week. We anticipate construction will start this fall and that the new treatment plant will be online by the summer of 2019. This project has a total projected cost of more than $3 million for 1 million gallons per day of treated water. We're going to reactivate the 20 treatment plant and evaluate use of ion exchange resin instead of traditional carbon treatment as a method of possibly saving some money. You may ask, why are we reactivating a plant? The 20 treatment plant was put in place to treat the water for taste and odor many years ago. That has since been offline. We have the ability to utilize those vessels that have been offline and repurpose them for treating PFAS. So there'll be some savings associated with that, and it'll give us the opportunity to test some other possible treatment methods. We're going to do a hydraulic model to determine which sources we should target first in our system with treatment. We're going to aim for the largest producers in each zone, like the CAR treatment plant. And we're going to communicate with wholesale sources about their plans for treatment as we purchase from 2 other systems currently. As part of communications, while we're here tonight and moving forward, we're going to inform and educate municipalities we serve, sensitive populations, and all the public. Today's began with the webinar that we hosted in the afternoon. We're here tonight to provide that same webinar, and we're going to post this on the website. We're going to be sending out a mailer to all consumers, which will reach their mailboxes by Monday of next week. We're going to be putting frequently asked questions and information on our website, and we're going to be following all of that with individual water quality open houses in all 4 municipalities, starting here in Ridgewood on September 25th. We have a tentative date in Wyckoff of October 4th, and working on dates with both Midland Park and Glen Rock. Give you a little bit more on what those open houses can consist of. This is not going to be your traditional water forum where you come in, listen to us speak, and ask questions. We're going to have a series of tables set up, stations on different contaminants, what Ridgewood Water does, how we're going to treat the contaminant. Give the consumer the opportunity to come in, feel comfortable, and ask any question that they want to have answered. Ridgewood Water staff will be manning each station. They will have information boards, with the documentation on each contaminant and resources that can be utilized by the public. And we have invited both the DEP, Department of Health, and the US EPA to be at each forum to provide information and answer questions. So what are the challenges that exist even after doing all this public education? While the technology is there to measure smaller and smaller amounts of emerging contaminants, the science to understand the meaning of these levels is still evolving. While Ridgewood Water will provide information for state and government resources where additional information can be found, Ridgewood Water cannot instruct or advise individuals on actions they can or should take. Ridgewood Water's job is one of compliance with the rules. Although it involves safety and health, we can only advise the public on where to find that information or what to do. It would be no different than what we did with our lead and copper exceedance back in 2012. The New Jersey DEP and US EPA resources and support are strained due to both statewide and nationwide impacts. As you can see from the numbers, one has a number of 70 parts per trillion, one has as low as 13. Together, they are not matching, not talking. We need to get these groups together and the science behind it all resolved so that we have one standard uniformly for all the water utilities, whether it be in New Jersey or all of the United States. As far as resources and why this whole webinar will be posted on our website, there are several good resources up on the State Department of Health website, New Jersey DEP website, federal level EPA has some, as well as the Federal Department of Health. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions you have. I thank you for holding them to the end.
Thank you, Rich and Dan, for putting this together. I was just wondering if there's any other contaminants that could be coming out down the road that maybe you're looking at now or being more proactive with.
There's a potential list of another 20 contaminants that the Drinking Water Quality Institute is considering. They did a study on it, I believe it's over 10 years ago. So they're reinventing that study and looking closer at each of those contaminants. We've done an analysis of that list to determine if there are any other possible ones that could affect us. There's possibly one other. So we're closely working with our policy advisor in Trenton to work, with the elected officials down there and representatives from DEP to determine what the next steps will be on those contaminants. And our hope is to have some representation on the Drinking Water Quality Institute in the future so we could help shape the release of those new levels. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor?
No, my only questions were the health implications, but I guess that's still being studied, is the impact to health.
We will have a full answer to that on the website because we expect that's going to be the number one question. So it'll probably be number 1 or 2 on the FAQs.
Okay.
That'll be posted on our website. Actually, I have with me tonight, I could leave them at the table once I get up here, a copy of the New Jersey Department of Health flyer. It's a 2-page flyer which has a good summary and answers a lot of the questions, particularly the health effect question about treatment, what you could do at home, alternate sources of water, etc.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Councilman Walsh?
I don't have any questions.
Councilman Voigt, I know you have questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Rich, a couple questions on what's the time frame for compliance and who should we comply with, the NJDEP or the US EPA? We have to comply with the New Jersey DEP. Yeah. So to give you an example of compliance timeline with the current MCL just released for PFNA, which we don't have. What they're requiring is in the first 2-year period, all small water systems start quarterly monitoring to identify if they have it in the water, because the unregulated contaminant monitoring does not cover small systems. We did the testing based on our size. So their first goal is to look at those small utilities and see if they have an issue with the contaminant. The year after that, it then kicks in that all the utilities our size have to formally do the monitoring and take action. So we will have a good period of 2 to 3 years for us to ramp up and provide treatment based on the information we have today. Okay. One of your slides says that, and this is the US EPA, it says a level of 70 parts per trillion, and then it says this offers a margin of protection for all Americans throughout their lifetime, 70 parts per trillion. So why are we complying with 13 parts per trillion if we're going to be safe at 70?
Because the Department of Environmental Protection and the Drinking Water Quality Institute, their review of documentation and literature, they differ with the EPA decision. They feel that a lower level is necessary to protect their goal. I believe it's of a 1 in a 1 million exposure limit over the lifetime of any resident in New Jersey. So on that basis, they came down to the conclusion of the much lower levels.
Okay. You mentioned that we were testing every well. Is that correct? Just even if it didn't have a detectable level?
Correct.
Yeah. Are we still going to do that?
We're going to do it on a regular quarterly basis moving forward. You saw that large gap we had between round 1 and 2. That's because we waited for all the wells to go back online this summer. But moving forward, we're just going to go with a routine quarterly monitoring regardless of what wells are on or off. We're not going to wait.
Let me just, as a theoretical, so supposing the US EPA wins out and they say it's 70 parts per trillion, and let's say we've spent a whole bunch of money to comply with 13 parts per trillion. I'm just thinking that possibly that's a lot of money spent on overkill. We're going to obviously comply with the 13 parts per trillion no matter what. Is that correct?
The treatment process, regardless, is aimed to take it down to no detect, whether the regulation's 70 or 13.
Yeah.
But the timing, you could see just based on the CAR project, the feasibility study, the design going out to the bid, well exceeded a year. I think it was almost 2 years, in fact. So just in that time frame, I'd expect that the EPA and DP are going to come to a decision on where the regulation should be.
Is it going to cost us a lot more to process water at 13 parts per trillion versus 70 parts per trillion?
No, because it all comes down to our concentration of what we have going into the treatment plant. That will determine how long the media in each vessel will last.
Okay.
And our levels are below the 70 parts per trillion with the exception of the CAR treatment plant.
Yeah. So supposing we identify the culprit of the person who's actually been contaminating, we find them we assume they're responsible. What does that mean from a legal standpoint? And maybe this is something Matt can weigh in on. We're going to go after them, I would guess. We're going to ask them to clean up their mess. So what does that mean from a legal standpoint, and how long is that going to take? Because we're going to be spending, I would imagine, probably multi-millions of dollars to clean up the water here, and it'd be nice to have somebody to pay rather than the residents. So how does that work?
If I could, before Mr. Roger jumps in the past with contaminants, the state DEP will typically take the lead to try to identify the sources. But naturally, that does take time. In the case of volatile organic compounds, they created a spill fund whereby utilities like us could then go apply for grants to pay for the treatment. But certainly, I would recommend between the time that they get to that and now that we continue to explore where this is possibly coming from, because outside of the legal action, we could possibly stop the polluter from putting it into the aquifer. We're working very closely with, again, our policy advisor relative to legislation and rules around all of this, because we're hearing it not just from ourselves, but Ridgewood Water is tired of being the pump and treat mechanism for polluters in the state of New Jersey. For too long, it's been pump, treat, and drink. That can't be the process anymore. The polluters have to pay for the cleanup. It can't be that we put an air stripper or treatment on our well and clean it up for them and then expect people to drink it. So that's going to be our message moving forward.
Thank you.
And just with regard to the questions that you've asked, identification of the polluter or the cause of this, particularly with the PFAS and the PFAOs, is really difficult because it's in so many different types of substances and things that have gotten into the aquifer could be over a longer period of time. There may be an identity of one, but with all the effort that's being spent on trying to maintain compliance with regard to the levels, it's hard to try and identify exactly, spend the time to investigate and identify. And that's why you have to rely on DEP to be the lead with regard to this for us. DEP does deal with this from the standpoint of a cleanup. They actually do extract fines, penalties, and costs for their issues that they are dealing with the polluter when they are caught. We also have a separate action that we can maintain against the polluter to take care of the costs and expenses that we can attribute to their actions as well. So it's an involved process. I mean, it's not something that I know it, I understand it, but we do have separate environmental attorneys that if and when that time comes, or if we get close to that, we could rely on them to make sure that we're following the right process and going after the right people. So,
Thank you.
So when we talk about the maximum contamination levels, DEP says 13 parts per trillion, EPA 70 parts per trillion. Obviously, they both can't be right. Is there, can we kind of have appeal to sort of as a mediator, find a way to split the baby here? How do we, can we take that approach?
Our appeal process is with the legislatures in Trenton. We're starting to, that process of conversation, and because there's not enough, in my mind, significant data surrounding either of the two, we need somebody to kind of be the leader to move forward and try to take that stand on trying to mediate the middle. But that's certainly one of our goals. Because, like Mr. Voigt said, we want to know where we have to be.
Sure.
That way no money's wasted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But regardless of what that number that's set is, wouldn't we endeavor to continually work to lower and lower and lower, just to ensure that we don't have to necessarily say, okay, well, this is the number, that's what we'll be. We could work to just clean it and do more for ourselves, right?
You can elect to do that, but we have many contaminants that we fall below the level on. It's how far you want to go with the treatment.
No, I understand, but we would endeavor to do the best we possibly can, humanly possible, I would imagine.
Yes.
Okay. Without impacting rates significantly.
Yes, you're talking large capital expense associated with the treatment. Car alone is just one point of entry, although it's one of the largest, but it's over $3 million in capital.
Of course.
I'm sure if we clean enough, we can make the water taste like Poland Spring, but it'll cost quite a bit to come out of the faucet.
I mean, this filtration, it's like a large charcoal filter. So it does have an effect on taste, odor, and quality. So the water characteristic will certainly improve.
So maybe we'll just break protocol here. Maybe if any members of the public have any questions for Mr. Calvi, maybe we'll limit it to 10 minutes total, just if you have a couple of quick questions, yeah?
Goodell, 234 Mulberry Place. I wasn't even going to stay for this, but it seemed so interesting that I had to. And throughout your presentation, the very naive thought that occurred to me was, who was responsible for these contaminants? Councilman Voigt brought this up, and you've now brought this up. Mr. Rogers made some comments about this. I am really encouraged that there's at least some thinking about going after the source of these contaminants to help pay for some of this. It may be a fool's errand, and it may take years and years, but I have to encourage you to keep at it.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dan and Rich, and thank you very much
Thanks,
for all
Rich.
your effort
Yeah,
and
thanks, Dan.
for the leadership as usual. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the manager's report. So this Sunday, September 16th, oh, wait 1 minute. Well, This Sunday, September 16th, from noon to 5 p.m. on East Ridgewood Avenue is the Fall Arts, Crafts, Food Street Fair. It's free admission. It's held rain or shine. This is a great event in Ridgewood. East Ridgewood Avenue is closed off for several blocks, and there are great vendors at this event. Free Shred Day is Saturday, September 22nd, 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. It will be at the Graydon Pool parking lot at Northern Parkway. Again, this is held rain or shine. This is a Zabriskie Shedler House. We are meeting tomorrow with our historic preservation architect to finalize the time frame for the historic restoration work at the Zabriskie Shedler House. I'll report on the restoration work and the status of the nomination of the house to be listed on the state and national register for historic places at the next Village Council work session on September 26th. I want to announce that the Ridgewood Senior Bus will be adding Wednesdays to the standard Tuesday, Thursday operational days of service. The additional cost for this will be donated by Age Friendly Ridgewood. Parking reminders. We have been giving out informational pieces of paper to those who are parking in the wrong area or not paying enough in the meters to let them know that parking has changed in Ridgewood. We are going to start enforcement beginning sometime next week. So one last time, I just want to remind everyone the hourly rates are now 75 cents per hour. Enforcement is Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Saturday 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Sunday and federal holidays are free. The meter duration is 3 hours except for the main Cottage Place lot, which is 11 hours. Please be aware that the lot between the Gap and Gilsenan Real Estate will continue to be 3-hour duration. CBD employee parking spaces require a CBD permit. The spaces are located in Walnut Street and Cottage Place parking lots, and they're delineated by signage. CBD parking permits and monthly hang tags may be purchased at the reception desk in Village Hall, or if you wish to just park by the day, you can pay it through Park Mobile or in Cottage Place at the parking kiosks. We've expanded our kiosk pilot program and have removed parking meters in several locations. So in addition to the Chestnut Street parking lot, parking kiosks have been installed in Cottage Place parking lot, Cottage Place Annex parking lot, and both sides of North Broad Street between Franklin and East Ridgewood Avenues. They accept, the kiosks accept quarters. It's not just any coin. So we'll try to put signage on the kiosk indicating that, dollar bills and credit cards. And they're marked with signs. The parking kiosks require you to put in the license plate number of your vehicle. Park Mobile is still available for you to pay for parking by downloading the app to your smartphone. September 25th is the date for the new meter times for the train station parking lot and park and ride. Again, that'll be Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Later in September, we can look forward to the following events in Memorial Park at Van Ness Square, Good Life Ridgewood in the afternoon on September 30th, and Gold Star Mother's Day event is held 6:30 to 8 p.m. on September 30th. That's all I have.
So Heather, do you have the Fall Arts Craft?
Yes.
What's the date for that event?
I'm sorry, say it again?
What's the date?
It's this Sunday, September 16th. It's sponsored by our Ridgewood Recreation Department in conjunction with PJ's Promotions, who helps us run it.
Thank you. Councilman Seaton?
Thank you, Mayor. Shade Tree Commission met last night, and we're looking into replacing the sycamore tree at Graydon, and we've identified 2 or 3 elm varieties, and our employees are going to go and check those out in the following weeks at a nursery in Mawa. They have the varieties we're looking for, and quite possibly we could have a planting done in later this fall. So that'll get replaced, and we're talking about several other issues with Adopt a Tree, so there's going to be more to come with that, and then gearing up for fall plantings. So that's really all we have. Thank you.
So ask a question. So what's happened to the tree that we cut down, the sycamore?
Chunks of it are at the recycling yard.
Recycling yard.
Storing it and drying it.
Drying it, okay.
Because it's going to take quite a while for it to dry until you could work it and make like spatulas or bowls or anything.
How long does that take usually?
Years. We're going to have chunks hanging around for a while, so lots of time to gather up ideas and see who wants to do what.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor?
Right, so the planning board met last Tuesday evening, September 4th. The board heard testimony and public comment pertaining to an application for 200-210 South Broad Street. The application sought approval for a preliminary and major site plan and a C variance, and the application was approved with stipulations. The board also heard from the Master Plan Advisory Committee as we ready for the launch of our website, social media platforms, and begin public outreach part of the master plan. The Our Village, Our Vision website includes a homepage with polls, links to master plan and re-examination reports, frequently asked questions, placeholders for schedules, and more. Once that website is live, residents and stakeholders will be invited to visit, register for updates, and become actively engaged with the new master plan process, so it's really exciting. 4th of July is just around the corner, and the committee met Monday evening at the firehouse, and that was a hugely productive meeting, even in the early planning stages. Suggestions for the 2019 theme. If anybody has suggestions for the 2019 4th of July theme, feel free to email me those ideas at snudson@ridgewoodnj.net. Keep in mind that the Village of Ridgewood was incorporated in 1894, making 2019 the village's 125th anniversary. And we would like to congratulate and thank our continuing officers, Committee President Tara Masterson, Vice President Chris Ramundi, Secretary Legal Senate, and Treasurer is her husband, Skylar Saltio. Ridgewood Arts Council met last night. We discussed the ongoing Artist Talk series, grant possibilities to fund future committee initiatives, and implementing art installations and programs throughout the village. The current garage design allows for a mural on the Broad Street side of the deck, and the Art Council will begin considering design options and bring ideas to the Village Council for seasonal murals and different ideas for those installations. Also, the group will begin working through details of a proposed project to engage landlords with empty storefronts to participate in a window beautification project. The idea is to offer ideas and possible installations to diminish the look of vacancies by displaying art or window displays during those downtimes rather than just empty window storefronts and for rent signs. So they were going to continue to work with that, and the idea was rather than, I think about 2.5 years ago, we discussed no, not 2.5 years, 4 years ago, wow. The council, I think we had some preliminary discussions about an ordinance, but we thought that it might be a good idea to do this more on a voluntary basis rather than do it through ordinance like some municipalities have. Tomorrow night, Historic Preservation will be meeting early at 7:30 instead of our usual 8 p.m. The calendar is full with applications from Moxie, Yogi B, the Select Group, Daily Treat Building Renovations, and one residential renovation application. It's a packed agenda if anyone's interested in what Yogi B is. That shakes smoothies, wraps, and something else I don't remember. Earlier, as everyone heard, Lynn Brady and Tony Damiano spoke, and also Tess Giuliani was here to speak about the Vanderbeck Walton House, which is located at the crossroads of Maple Avenue and Prospect Street. The house is on both the state and national historic registries. The HPC members and our village historian, Joe Saplicki, along with others, are appealing to us as the village council and village officials to help save the distinctive centuries-old home. It certainly would be a shame to lose this historic gem. This is one of the 13 sites in Ridgewood listed on the National Registry of Historic Places. The Vanderbeck Walton House dates back to 1790. Although it's on both registries, the house is vulnerable to demolition due to private ownership. And my understanding is owner Leo Garcia, he purchased the house at auction without an interior inspection, and as we heard from Tony, has made a determination after gutting the interior that it cannot be renovated to suit his needs, and the only option is to demolish the house and build new. Therefore, there is a current plan to demolish the 230-year-old home. We're going to discuss this further at HPC, and hopefully we'll find a way to save this important piece of Ridgewood history, and I will pick Mr. Rogers' brain again and again and again until we find some solution. You want to say?
Nothing, just so the council knows, I've been in touch with the attorney for the property owner. The attorney is David Rutherford. I've been in touch with him a number of times on this already. And he had advised me, and it sounded different than what was stated today, that a number of architects have opined that the building itself, the structure isn't salvageable, isn't safe. So that when that happens, there are issues with regard to its historic character and whether or not it can be torn down. It sounded to me like there was an architectural opinion that it can be renovated and taken care of. So given that, I think that gives us some hope in order to do it, in order to at least preserve it for a certain purpose. But I think the main discussion really needs to be about what to do with the house and what's the best way, because if there's an interest in filing an application for a number of variances to the zoning board. If the zoning board denies those, there's an issue with regard to whether or not the present zone scheme makes this building, if it can't be saved, puts it into inutility. And there are certain types of remedies that the town is allowed or forced to take if nobody can build on the property. So there's a number of things that need to be discussed, but there is no demolition prior to the application to the zoning board. The application has not been filed yet. They don't expect to do anything, according to Mr. Rutherford, they don't expect to do anything until later in the fall or maybe during the winter in terms of an application. So there is a bit of a window right now to try and see what's the best course of action to take with regard to it. So,
Thank you. And I know that you and I have gone
yeah, we've talked about it
over and over on a variety of issues and the difference between private and public ownership, and so we'll keep working it. So next is a request to please consider participating in the Ridgewood Fire Department Adopt a Hydrant program. I'm a longtime participant, and if you go to the village website, you'll learn that just on the front page, in winter months, snow and ice covers fire hydrants and creates a safety problem for the fire department. The Ridgewood Fire Department has created an Adopt a Hydrant program to engage residents to help in clearing a 3-foot radius around each fire hydrant. And to participate, you merely just go to the village website and scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see to click for an application online. I've been doing this for a long time. We keep our fire hydrant clear. It's right in front of our house, but this is a really great thing to do with kids, even if you have a fire hydrant just in your neighborhood, up the street or something. It's a great thing to do with your kids, and the fire department presents you with this really nice certificate with a bright red fire hydrant, and it's really fun, and you can frame it, and there's some little recognition, but you're really just doing good for the neighborhood. And my last item, so the village council has had several email communications regarding the reinstatement of the school resource officer and the funding of same. From the fall of 2016 until just a few months ago, in actually a response to reinstate the SRO, during our monthly BOE meetings, we had this ongoing discussion working to find a way forward to fund the SRO. And in February, I believe it was February of 2018, in fact, the Board of Education voted that they supported, or said they stated during minutes of a meeting that they supported the reinstatement of an SRO. And I believe in the spring, the superintendent came to us and offered 35% to fund 35% of the SRO. We were requesting 50%, 50-50 split. We did pay for the 3 officers to go to the class. That was on our dime. These are budget issues, and obviously it's all taxpayer money, but we budget for things, and we were just requesting that they share in that or shoulder at least 50% of it, because even though you're shouldering 50% of it, the SRO is allocated technically 100% of the time, but it works out to maybe 70%. So we were willing just to split that down the middle. My understanding was that the last number offered by the superintendent was 35%. I think at the time, Councilman Hochet suggested that he go back and rework his numbers and come up to the 50%. And I think that the basic discussion revolved around not if the Board of Ed was going to fund it, but how much of it they were going to fund. So I'm hoping that as we get to our next meeting, monthly meeting with the BOE, that we can revisit this issue and bring it to some conclusion and correct whatever this kerfuffle or misunderstanding is. If anyone has anything to offer, I don't know if the village manager, the mayor has anything to offer, but importantly is that when we take an SRO out of our rotation and staffing numbers, we have to replace that officer into our numbers. So, we have to maintain our own Ridgewood Police Department staffing numbers. And that's all I have, but I don't know if you wanted to add to that at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've heard a lot of chatter about this and whether what was said or what was not. The Board of Ed didn't agree to. Of course, they haven't agreed to. Obviously, if they did, we wouldn't be talking about it now. But certainly in the discussions, we were never told that it wouldn't happen. We had just kind of come back and forth and argued over what the split should have been. A couple of arguments have been made of whether or not a school resource officer is really security or more education. And I still contend, and when you look at how when properly implemented, a school resource officer really is about community building. It's about establishing lines of communication with our students. These officers are specially trained to look at behaviors and to prevent things from happening. It's not that we need an officer there with a gun because we have, luckily we don't have these issues on a daily basis, but we do have, situations where you need to have someone who's properly trained and be able to communicate with the students. And, that's, whether it's education, security, I say it's a little bit of everything. And, but, most important is community building. And I do hope that in the next discussions that we have with the Board of Ed, that there's some reconsideration on their part. Councilwoman Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have the Chamber of Commerce meeting to report on. So we had our chamber meeting this morning, and unfortunately, the forecast of the weather for the car show, they had to make a command decision. All of the weather reports that they had at the time were indicating that it was going to be storming, and the dealers and the individuals who were coming wanted to know whether it was on or off, so they had to make a command decision and unfortunately cancel the car show. The majority of people got the message. Some people didn't and showed up anyhow, so there were people in the village with cars. And there was music still, so it was kind of, there was a little bit of a car show, but wasn't really a formal car show. So anybody that had signed up this year obviously will have the ability to put their application in next year without being charged. One of the topics that came up at the meeting were, because we're talking about parking, obviously, but we were talking also about some of the challenges in the CBD with delivery trucks. So a lot of the larger locations that have perhaps deliveries of food, we have a process where they're supposed to let us know when they're going to be delivering, but it appears that trucks are now just showing up and they're taking up corners, and this morning after I left the meeting, there was one on the corner of West Ridgewood and Broad in a no parking zone and taking up a full spot there. So they wanted to just get a clarification and then again do an education to all of the businesses as to what they're supposed to be doing with deliveries and the timing, and I think there's a permit that they have to fill out or a form with the village, and I guess not everybody is doing that, so that's something I'll follow up with the village manager on. They had several new members, and they are also updating, so along with our parking changes, they're going to be updating their welcome and parking guide. And we're also going to be doing the cards in the businesses that are going to have directions on where the map is to be able to park in different lots. We don't have, and they don't have a, what do you call it, the little square with the little barcode.
Oh, the QR reader?
Yeah,
QR code?
yeah. So I'll have to talk to the village manager to see if Dylan can do one of those so that they don't have to type in the village website or the chamber website, that they would be able to read it on this little card that we're going to produce. So we just have to double check on that. There's going to be some signage changes on the street, you know, the sign, the pole that has the names on it. Apparently there are fees to put your name on that pole, and then there's a maintenance fee that goes along with it. So some individuals have, I guess, indicated that they're not interested in re-signing up. So some of the names are going to come down, but then other names are going to be going up. Let me see what else. We did talk at length about the new parking fees and the kiosk, and it was a great discussion, but Park Mobile did come up. So when you go, and I did it this morning myself, so when you go on Park Mobile, our meeting is from 8 to 10. So when I pulled up, I parked on Chestnut, but Park Mobile would only let me start at 8 a.m. It doesn't let you default the first non-charged hour. So I don't know if we can talk to Park Mobile about how you would do that, because it wouldn't let me. So if I had put an hour in, the clock would have started ticking at 8 a.m. It doesn't let you default that first hour. And that was in, the same thing happened to another member that was there. So it was 4301 and 4315. So I'm assuming it's all of them, but those were the two that we parked in. And then a question came up about handicap parking, and we were all confused as to what the actual rule is. So apparently there is a proprietor who has a handicap permit, but they've been parking in a 15-minute parking spot on the street all day. And when another proprietor complained, because they wanted that to be the spot where people go in and out the 15-minute, they indicated that RPD said that if somebody has a handicap placard, that they can park in any spot all day long. So I didn't think that was the case. So I wanted to double check with the village manager on that. I thought that perhaps if there's an individual that is a proprietor, they could perhaps come to the village and petition for us to put an additional handicap spot somewhere within close proximity, because when I looked at the map, the closest handicap spot is pretty far away. So, and I know that we only have a handful of them on street, but the landlord does have a parking lot, but there are no handicap spots in the parking lot. So I suggested that perhaps they also go to the landlord to see if the landlord would be willing to mark one of the spots there too. So that was another question, because apparently there's other people that park in spots on the street with handicap placards and stay all day. So this one was just that this is started the topic, and then everybody was like, yeah, you know, this person does it, this person does it. So, and then the only other thing was talking about when the parking lot is closed down. I said we were already actually talking about what we're going to be doing, but the conversation of perhaps a shuttle to the Graydon lot. So, ongoing conversation. And that was it.
Shuttle to the Graydon lot for the folks who are parking in Hudson.
Yeah,
right
when we because with Whole Foods losing their current parking, if they're in the cottage lot and there's not enough space during that time frame, what could we do?
So we actually, Epic has been working on that, and they actually secured off-street parking to accommodate the folks that are parking in Hudson Street today.
Oh, good.
And it would just be 1 block, 2 blocks away. So that's good. And I know that Whole Foods was actually hired a firm to source parking. But at least I know that when the construction starts at the end of next summer, those commuters who are parking in Hudson Street today will have parking already set somewhere else.
Within walking distance?
Within walking distance,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, good. We solved one problem.
I had a quick question. When you were talking about the signs, you were talking about the wayfinding signs? Is
Yeah.
that what they're, and so they have that annual fee, and some don't want, even though they still exist, they don't want to pay the annual fee?
Yeah.
And so their signs come down?
Yep.
And the chamber can't come up with some creative way to allow?
They did. They talked to them, and the individuals Yeah,
Okay.
they didn't,
So they just take their plaque and go
they
home?
take their plaque and go home. Yep, and somebody else will put their, yep.
Thank you. Councilman Boyd?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of upcoming meetings. I didn't have any this past week. Tomorrow night, we have the Community Center Advisory Board meeting at 5 p.m. And then next Thursday, we have the Citizen Safety Advisory Committee in the Garden Room at 7:30 on September 20th. I know Father Ron will probably kill me, but I'm going to mention the block party that's coming up at Mount Carmel on Sunday, starting at 1:30 for all of the parishioners who attend Mount Carmel. It's a really fun time, and it's just a nice way to relax and get together with people you really like. So it starts at 1:30. It's behind the convent in the parking lot there, and please attend. So thanks.
Thank you.
Can I just jump in? That's actually not open just to Mount Carmel parishioners. It's open to the public, right?
It is, yeah. Anybody can come in. Yeah, absolutely.
Just have a few things to report on. This past Sunday, I attended the Guild Music Festival at Van Ness Park. The cold weather and the rain couldn't keep folks away from celebrating. I was afraid that it would be canceled because of the weather, the ominous weather forecasts. But there were a lot of tents set up. I was actually surprised at how many people showed up. It was a good crowd. I want to thank Tony Damiano for inviting me, but most importantly, for continuing to sponsor events that highlight the arts, whether it's music in the night, the music festival, the film festival, movies in the park. These are all events that highlight the beauty of our central business district, and I appreciate that. On Saturday, we had coffee with the council for new residents, and that was fun. Always have, it's interesting to see the new wave of folks who come into town. I got to meet a lot of nice people, and it just becomes a really great way, especially when you're new into the community, to kind of figure out how things work and things move. So it was a very nice time. I unfortunately had to leave early. I had to go coach a football game. I was on Friday, I was down in Washington, D.C. I was invited to the bipartisan 5th Congressional District meeting of mayors. It only comes with the invite. We had to cover my own expenses, but it was a very nice event. We got to meet with some of the agencies in Washington, met with Department of Transportation, Department of Defense, FEMA, and also USDA, which wasn't really relevant to us, but there was just the discussion was around how do we find programs that we can tap into of federal dollars, grant possibilities, particularly as they relate to quality of life improvements. Sidewalks was one with the DOT that I was very excited about and hope to follow up on that. And then also with the Department of Defense to talk about their surplus programs for equipment for police and fire. So it was a very productive conversation. Got a nice tour of the Capitol building, and it was a good event. Just wanted to touch on something. We received a copy of a resolution from the Township of Washington opposing the rate increases that are petitioned by Suez Water to the Board of Public Utilities. And I just want to state for the record that Suez, whose rates are already higher than our rates, our water rates, they're seeking an 80% increase for its ratepayers. I think it's a significant point to make. I know there's been a lot of talk about rates around here, but I wanted to point that out just for the record. That is all that I have.
So the next items are for Ridgewood Water. There are no ordinances this evening. However, for resolutions, the following resolutions numbered 18-270 through 18-274 will be adopted by consent agenda with one vote by the Village Council. They will be read by title only. Award contract under Sourcewell National Joint Powers Alliance Program, purchase of hydro excavator. Award contract under Sourcewell National Joint Powers Alliance Program, 2019 Ford Escape. Award contract under state contract, ruggedized switches for fiber network. Award professional services contract, professional engineering services for design and construction of Eder Lakeview and Southside pump and well stations. And award professional services contract, public communications.
I'd like to make a motion.
Second.
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
and Hache.
Yes. I move the first reading of ordinance 3672.
Second?
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Hache.
Yes. So order. Would the clerk please read ordinance 3672 by title?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 3, Article 8 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood entitled Residency Requirements.
For civilian titles? Oh. I move that ordinance 3672 be adopted on first reading and that October 10th, 2018 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
Second?
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
and Hache.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3663 by title on second reading and that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
and Hache.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3663?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Vehicles and Traffic, at Section 265-65, Schedule 15, parking prohibited at all times, and Section 265-67, Schedule 17, parking prohibited certain hours.
The public hearing is now open. Okay. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
and Hache.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3663 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
and Hache.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3664 by title on second reading that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
and Hache.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3664?
A bond ordinance amending sections 3C1 and 3D of bond ordinance number 3644 of the Village of Ridgewood in the County of Bergen, New Jersey, finally adopted May 19, 2018, in order to decrease the appropriation and the authorization of bonds and notes in section 3C1 and increase the appropriation and authorization of bonds and notes in section 3D by similar amounts.
The public hearing is now open. Okay. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
and Hache.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3664 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
and Hache.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3665 by title on second reading and that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Hache.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3665?
A bond ordinance providing for the acquisition of a hook lift body with all accessories for the Parks Department in and by the Village of Ridgewood in the County of Bergen, New Jersey, appropriating $58,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of 55,000 bonds or notes of the village to finance part of the cost thereof.
The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
and Hache.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3665 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
and Hache.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3666 by title on second reading and that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3666?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Vehicles and Traffic, at Section 265-74, Schedule 24, Bus Stops.
The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3666 be adopted on second reading, the final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Hache.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3667 by title and second reading, that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3667?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 190 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Land Use and Development at Section 190-122H to permit temporary displays in front of retail establishments.
The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3667 be adopted on second reading, the final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3668 by title and second reading, that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3668?
An ordinance of the Village of Ridgewood amending the provisions in Chapter 190 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Land Use and Development concerning the permitted encroachment of steps or stairs in the required setbacks.
The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3668 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3669 by title on second reading, that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3669?
An ordinance of the Village of Ridgewood amending the provisions in Chapter 190, Land Use and Development concerning the required front yard setback in the B1 and B2 districts.
The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3669 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes.
The following resolutions, numbered 18-275 through 18-288, are to be adopted by a consent agenda with one vote by the Village Council. Resolution 18-277 has been removed from the agenda. Each resolution will be read by title only. Award contract under state contract, purchase of video teleconferencing equipment. Award contract under state contract, one Chevrolet Tahoe SUV. Award contract under Educational Services Commission of New Jersey contract, purchase of sanitation truck. Award professional services contract, professional appraiser for Block 3806, Lot 2, the town garage. Increase appropriation to contract, furnish and deliver pipe and appurtenances, water pollution control facility. Declare property surplus, international hook lift and auto car packer. Declare property surplus, IT equipment. Approve debt and financial management policies for the Village of Ridgewood. Accept donation from Conservancy for Ridgewood Public Lands, Children's Sensory Butterfly Garden. Approve person-to-person liquor license transfer, Granova Inc. to Patpar Inc. Establish trial period and permit fee for outdoor displays in Central Business District. Authorize cleaning of Grove Park area by the Ridgewood Wildscape Association, the Ridgewood Environmental Advisory Committee, and associated partners. Affirm Class 6 rating for National Flood Insurance Program's Community Rating System. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voight.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes.
The following resolution, numbered 18-289, will be read in full. Be it resolved that the mayor of the Village of Ridgewood, with consent of the Village Council, hereby makes the following appointment to the Ridgewood Public Library Board of Trustees: Rocco Orlando, to fill the unexpired term of Arlene Sarapo, which term shall expire on December 31st, 2018. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Newton,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Abstain.
and Hache.
Yes. With that, we go back to public comment, not to exceed 5 minutes per person.
Good evening, Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Thank you for updating us, Deputy Mayor Knudsen, about the situation with the school resource officer. I think that everybody, all of our elected officials, both from the Board of Education and from the Village Council, agree that this is an important position, and obviously the money's going to come out of our pockets regardless, but I find it extremely dismaying that the Board of Ed, to use my word, has reneged on their agreement. And I have a letter here from one of the Board of Ed members, Mr. James Morgan, which he says that now I lost it. He says, neither the superintendent nor the board has ever indicated to the village manager that the school district would contribute to this position, and the village budget reflects this understanding. Accordingly, the board has not reneged on any agreement. So, you know, even though obviously we need to pay for this regardless, I just think it's absolutely distressing that our elected body on the Board of Ed is doing this. So thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. There were some comments made earlier about parking, and I just want to put my 2 cents in with respect to them. Number one is that I disagree with Mr. Damiano. I think it's a good thing that the meters are coming out. Obviously, if you've got hundreds of meters to maintain, that's a lot more costly than maintaining just a dozen or so, maybe that's what it will wind up to be, kiosks. Also, the opportunity for theft from hundreds of meters is very large, whereas the opportunity from theft from computer-controlled kiosks that tell you exactly how much money should be in the kiosk at the end of each day is significantly reduced. So again, I disagree with the opinion of Mr. Damiano that removing the meters was a bad thing. I think it was a good thing, and I encourage the council and the village manager to do whatever they can to expedite the process so that we are left with no meters in the village as opposed to the meters that still do exist. Also, with respect to the comment from Mr. Goodell about he would be fine if the taxpayers picked up more parking charges, I disagree with that as well. The people who are using the parking should pay for the parking. I know people find this hard to believe, but there are many people who live in Ridgewood that never enter the CBD for any reason. They live on the outskirts of town. Maybe they live by Washington Township, and they go to Washington Township or Paramus. They live by Hohokus. They decide to conduct their business in Hohokus. Why should those property owners be forced to pay for a service they never use? If you use the parking, you pay for the parking. It should not fall upon the burden of the taxpayers to pick up any unnecessary costs. So jack the rates up. You don't want to put yourself out of business by jacking them up too high, but let us keep the burden away from the property owners of Ridgewood. We don't need that burden. I will concur with the beautiful lady in the back that you have meeting minutes that suggest that the conversation took place. The board is suggesting that the conversation didn't take place. You have minutes that say it did. I don't know why the shenanigans, but again, my belief is that it's somehow connected with a decision you made regarding moving the election. That's my personal opinion. I had a conversation with the deputy mayor today regarding this notice I received from the Friends of the Ridgewood Library. I won't go into any details because I've got no facts right now to support the information I received that there may be something going on with the way in which the library picks people who are allowed to present at the library. But I would just ask that this continue to be followed up on until we get some real answers as to what's going on over there. I know the library is scheduled to come to see you on September 26th and ask that you support a $8 million renovation project, which would involve tax dollars. My opinion is that if tax dollars are involved in running the operation over there, everything has to be squeaky clean. As it stands right now, based upon some information I received from somebody who tried to conduct business over there, it's not passing the smell test, and I will leave it up to the deputy mayor to try to get to the bottom of what's going on over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, thank you. We'll close public comment.
I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Good night, everybody.